Now 10:45 or 11:45. I think we can. The halftime break has already occurred. The second half of the match will now resume. And by second half, we deal with the second bill that is before us, which is the Division of Revenue Bill for the year 2025-2026 financial year. We will then, Mashile, may I ask of you to read to the record the motion of desirability.
Thank you, Chairperson, and honorable members and colleagues. The motion of desirability, the Division of Revenue Bill, Bill 15, 2025, that in the opinion of the committee, the legislation is desirable to provide for equitable division of revenue raised nationally among national, provincial, and local spheres of government for the 2025-2026 financial year, the determination of each province's equitable share, allocations to provinces, local government, and municipalities from national government's equitable share, the responsibilities of all three spheres of government pursuant to such divisions and allocations, and to provide for matters connected therewith. Thank you, Chairperson.
Thank you, honorable members. Is there a member who will support propose the motion as put forward before us? Is there a member who would like to move for the adoption of the motion of desirability? Honorable Lekhanyane, is there a member who will second the adoption of the motion of desirability? Honorable Siat. With that in mind, the motion of desirability is duly adopted. Honorable members, we move to the Division of Revenue Bill and the report being tabled before the Standing Committee on Appropriations. The report is voluminous. I would imagine, members, we are going to have a lot of discussion in the sections that speaks with findings and recommendations. Keeping in mind, naturally, backgrounds, many of those issues are there, and members, I'm not saying that cannot make inputs to that. I'm not suggesting that at all. I just want us to make sure that when we have the debate towards the recommendations, findings, that is perhaps the bulk of the substantive work that this committee does. In the light of that, let us then begin to unpack the report. Let me begin. We will go through it in a similar manner as we did. And then when members want to make inputs, as I go through page by page, please raise your hand so that we can go. Starting with page 1. Yebo.
Not necessarily.
Honorable Wakelin.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. And just a general comment, if I may, on a report. This is 3.0. We have not identified in the start of the report all the previous work we have done. And I don't know if it's necessary or not. I'm actually asking a question if we should or not, and show a course of all the other work we previously done to get to this point. Because nowhere we speak about all the previous time and effort we've spent. I don't know if it's necessary. If you think it's not, it's fine. It's just a comment I wanted to leave with you.
I hear you, Honorable Wakelin. My report is perhaps maybe my response would be perhaps a tagging question. When you tag a particular bill, it's not tagged version 1, version 2, version 3. It is tagged in a particular manner, and so the report is on a particular bill. That there's a political context to it, and that this is the third version of the issue, is a separate matter relative to saying that it is tagged, we're dealing with a particular bill on a particular time. I hear you, and perhaps maybe the inference is there in the sense of timelines, but I think this is tagged in a way. Proceeding then, in the absence of any inputs, page 2. Page 3. Honorable Molefe.
Chair, the issue that is being made there, that 70% of budgets, in some cases,
Please specify. Oh, yeah, I see paragraph 2 so that we know we are reading the same thing.
see the last paragraph of page 2 that goes on to page 3.
Yes, I see that. Thank you.
Yeah, and a similar point is made about local government as well. That 70%. So with local government is that 70% of its revenue comes from intergovernmental transfers, and with provinces is that 70% of its expenditure goes to salaries.
Honorable Molefe, can you speak into the microphone? Even I'm struggling to hear you. Yeah.
With provinces, the report says 70% of the budget goes to salaries in certain provinces. And then with local government, it says 70% of the revenue in some municipalities, 70% of the revenue is from intergovernmental transfers, which means that they're not sustainable. But also, if 70% of your salaries in the budget goes to, of 70% of the budget goes to salaries, there is very little left for capex. And so I don't know where we raise that as a concern. If we were in a meeting of auditors, I would say it's a going concern issue, that these things are not it's not sustainable. So these points are being made here, and that's why I'm raising it here. But I think as the committee, maybe later on, we can make an observation to say that this is untenable.
One Honorable Molefe, this is just painting the background. There are recommendations that speak to exactly the point you are raising. Fiscal sustainability of provinces, municipalities. You will read as you go through the report, there are inputs done by SALGA that challenged even notionally this idea of 90-10. That debate, this is just merely painting the background. It will then find its expression.
Yeah, I just want us to flag it so that I just want us to double check that that point is made. Go fellow.
It is. Ke tla bua jaaka moruti. Re santsane re le go Genesis. Leta ya go Revelation e tla. Honorable Wakelin.
Thank you, Chair. If you can just bear with me on page 3, the first paragraph. Let me just give context before I tell you what I'd like to see change. The context is the impression you get when you read it. It's not the local government's fault that they are in that position. I'm saying to you there's a number of issues that was raised by the AG on numerous reports and a number of other committees. And I would like to emphasize those points. And let me continue. Let me just use one example. So after the matter of capital project due to weak capacity, do you see that, Chair?
Paragraph, we're on page 3 now.
Yeah, page 3. Furthermore, government acknowledged that underspending on capital projects due to weak capacity. What I want to insert here is weak project management compliance and non-adherence of procurement processes further hampers service delivery. If we just emphasize weak capacity as a reason for not delivering, that's not true.
I hear you, Honourable Member. This comes from the background of the tabling of the budget. So can I suggest that that recommendation about capacity, and you make 2 points. It's project management and?
Weak project management compliance.
Weak project management compliance
And
as it emanates from the Auditor General's report. Is that correct?
That's right.
So may I recommend that that point be captured when we discuss a recommendation on local government as an input from the committee?
Sure. Okay. I just want to get to the point that when people read this, that just not thinking the poor old souls, they are not complying because they are struggling. There's a number of other issues that we are not emphasizing, and this committee made very strong emphasis on them not complying and not good corporate governance. And similarly, if I may continue with the next paragraph.
Okay.
where we say increase the financing and delivery of infrastructure and improve the delivery of service and facilitate and support good corporate governance. If I could add that here or in a recommendation. We just need to get to a point that we be a balanced view, because we are trying to say that it's not. You get my point. I'm sure.
I hear you, and I think, to me, I think it's a what you are saying is a finding. It is a finding. You are saying it's not just a matter of capacity. It is a matter of project management. It is a finding. And so you will hear there's a discussion about Mangaung, you'll hear there's a discussion about, as you read the document. I'm more persuaded by the strength of the point as it speaks to findings rather than in the background. And I'd like to make it there strongly because the committee is concerned about this issue, is why we had municipalities come here. Sfiso?
Yes, Chairperson.
You had your hand up.
Yeah, I wanted to support what you are saying, because on the background, this is the information that is contained in the budget review. That's why you were saying with government acknowledges, because we take it directly from
The budget.
what National Treasury has presented in the budget review. But your point, it's a very good point, and I will support that we put it on the findings, because this background generally it's factual information which is in the report.
Of course, so, and I think, what I'm trying to also help us do is so that if somebody were to read it and then wake up and said, hey, National Treasury never said this or the minister never said that, this comes as a background from them. I must hear their story, you see. Let's keep going. Page 4. Yes, Honorable Waking.
On the first paragraph, you know, the
Top
matter
of page 4, page 5.
sorry, I just. It's my page 4 that talks to SARS. Yeah, exactly that one. You know, we've given SARS a lot of money, and we're giving them more. And by the own admittance of the Commissioner, I would like to put in the policy measures will be reassessed given the commitment by SARS. Additional revenue through more efficient tax administration, high tax compliance, due to an increase of budget allocation to SARS. Chair, the point I want to emphasize, or the emphasis point here for me is, we need to keep the SARS Commissioner committed to his, on the 20 billion or the 18 billion that we need. He agreed to that, saying, if you give me this, I will give you that. And we are not saying it here. And I want us to be clear on that matter.
Okay. Can you draft a sentence, because it will be carried later? Again, it's not. It's a bit like early in a film. If I could put it like that, it's earlier. This is just background. That's what the minister says. I must give what the minister says. As you read the report, you are reading it from saying, okay, these people are responding to these questions put by someone else. You follow what I mean? So let's allow the plot to thicken.
I just want to make sure that the SARS Commissioner is committed.
The SARS Commissioner must be held accountable, and so that point mustn't be lost. It will be bolstered at the end.
I'm with you too.
Are you with me? Great. Page 5. Is this... Mashile, where are you now?
Page 5.
Oh, or the table. I don't like looking at tables nowadays because chiefs are not top of it, so I move quickly when I see tables. Page 6. You have to look very hard to find chiefs on the table, Honorable Khanya. You have to keep searching.
We are still trying the shootings.
We are still there.
Let them run.
Page 7. Page 8. Can I just make it? It's a textual point. It's captured in brackets there, budget 3.0. Whilst I made the point about how the bill is tagged up there, if you are going to version it as version 3.0, it might just help with a line that says this is the third iteration in this instance of the division of revenue bill. Otherwise, if you put it in brackets as 3.0, I'm well entitled to ask you one day when I'm 90. And it's like, what do you mean by 3.0? Gape?
Yeah, it's actually not an official.
It's not. It's political comment. Honorable Moleve?
And strictly speaking, there's no 3.0
Correct.
because this is the budget.
Correct.
It's not a version of another one.
Correct. So if we can remove these, you can make it as commentary.
You offer officializing the thing.
Page 8. And then page 9. Page 10. Page 11. Page 12. Page 13. Page 14. Page 15. Awa latlhega. Page 16. Page 17. Page 18. Page 19. Page 20. You know, my pages and your pages are not the same, but I suppose. Now let's move to page 21. Page 22. Mashile, just slow down a little bit. I want to make sure we are all on the same WhatsApp group here.
Chair, are you sure that you're using the revised version? Because, okay, yeah, as long as the content is fine, then we will catch up then.
Sure.
Sure.
Page 23. page 24. Yeah, I'm on the PBO, page 25. Right. Now we get to page 26. In reading this, it disturbed my sleep permanently, to quote Honorable Lekhanyan. No, it's true. It genuinely is true. I think, and that point, I hope we will capture strongly and fight hard for it. Because, page 27. Page 28.
Sorry, Chair.
Yes.
Before we proceed, right? I think it was explained in the communication that was sent through to honorable members and colleagues, right? To say that the first version has been reworked without necessarily changing the content. So what I've done in here, the one that is in the first paragraph that is highlighted in yellow is exactly what is being said in the second paragraph. It is the same thing. The only change is the phrasing. So moving forward, it means that if we agree on the changes just to bring about coherence and understanding of the content and the meaning and the flow of ideas. So if we move forward, it means that I'm going to delete the second paragraph because it's the same thing, but put differently.
Maybe read the paragraph, Machine.
Yes.
Okay. Okay. SALGA submitted that government should pay attention to key expenditure drivers with specific focus on spending efficiency, budget cuts, compliance and delivery impact on conditional grants. Furthermore, SALGA made such submissions that budget cost on government an estimated amount of 43 billion due to bloated staff, 5 to 25 billion due to ghost employees, combined factors on quality of services, fruitless and wasteful expenditure at the tune of 10.34 billion, and municipalities at the tune of 7.31 billion.
Please read the original one.
Right. The original one is the one below.
May I ask, the use of the word tune. Tune is a colloquial term. It's either to some extent, it's to the extent of something, not.
Okay.
Tune is language that is.
The extent of, like this. Yeah. Yes. Yeah, should I read the second one, then the second version? Okay. On government key expenditure drivers, SALGA submitted that expenditure efficiency cuts, compliance and delivery impacts, which are areas that government should look into, particularly with conditional grants expenditure. Furthermore, according to SALGA, inefficiencies cost the government an estimated incurred bloated staff cost of 34 billion, ghost employers 5 to 25 billion, quality of services and fruitless and wasteful expenditure, in brackets, government 10.34 billion and municipalities 7.31 billion over a period. These are two versions, like as I explained.
Yes.
When we reworked on that one, we looked at the coherence and the flow of ideas, and some of the sentences would be jetty and hanging. So after we had invited for comments from members to have an input, one or two would pick up a few issues, and this is one of the things that was brought to our attention, so that we had to rework on that one, so that when somebody reads this, they would not be finding ideas hanging and sentence would not be linking in terms of the line of thought and the theme of understanding what the content is there in the report.
Honorable Kalaga Mazibu.
Okay, I hear Mr. Mashile, but on the corrected version, I'm trying to check where is the cost of the cost incurred on bloated staff, the 34 billion. Where is it reflected on the amended version?
10.34. If it's an omission, let's okay. Let's just check. Right. If you look at the 1, 2, 3, 4, the fifth line, there's a comma and then the 5 to 25 billion due to ghost employees and combined factors on quality. That is a combination of that one. In other words, it was dovetailed into that.
So you combined.
Yeah, in order to limit the chances of redundancy and regurgitation of the same ideas. Yes.
No, sorry, Chair. Maybe Mr. Mashila must explain, because at the one at the bottom, it talked about 34 billion, and at the top, to talk about 43 billion. Okay. Yeah, maybe that's the...
I think I'm persuaded by Honorable Kalaga Mazibugo's point about delineating the difference between bloated staff and ghosted employees, because the issue of ghosted employees is thematic throughout. And I think that it cannot, whilst I think the first paragraph, the one highlighted in yellow, reads better, I certainly do think that the delineation is important. Otherwise, you will lose certain aspects. So you delineate it as per the second paragraph in this regard. Honorable Khanyan.
Yeah, Chair, no, thank you so much. I think one other point that that must be clarified on the cost of bloated staff. When we say the cost of bloated staff, do we mean all people that have been employed? Or at what point do we say the staff is bloated? Because you may need to do a segmentation. My understanding is that if you say a staff is bloated, is that if you had to employ 20 people, maybe you employed 45. And then the 25 will make you bloated. If we calculate the costs and we bring them together into one segment or into one basket and say this is the cost of bloated staff, it may create a problem in terms of meaning or the message that we want to put across. So if we can have a segmentation there, like the Chair, Honorable Mazibuko say, on the ghosted employees, and also sitting somewhere, if I need to have an understanding, what are the employee costs without bloating? Because in any event, employee costs are inevitable. There must be employee costs, because there must be people to run an institution to help you to deliver the services that you want. But a bloated system can also present its own challenges. And that is why I'm asking the question, at what point? It may be because we are unable to put it or to frame it the way we want, because it's not our statement, Chair, it's a SALGA statement. And maybe SALGA was the one who was supposed to have said, we are supposed to be having X number of employees, but unfortunately, this is the number that we have. Where, for instance, a mayor will have 12 people appointed in his or her office, when that mayor was supposed to have 2 or 3 people. And that is where the bloating comes from. But the way it is put there, I don't know, but my understanding is that it also includes people who are legitimately employed. And we report all of that as the cost of a bloated staff. Each and every municipality must have a municipal manager and a CFO. We can't include the CFO and the municipal manager to be part of the bloated staff. They must have that. They must have such appointments. So
I do think Honorable Lekhanyane's point, the 43 billion isn't the expression of the cost of employees in total in my reading. Keeping in mind that the sphere of local government, in essence, if it is consuming for in its total fiscus, I think about a city like Johannesburg that is 70 billion rands, etc. Local government's budget in total of all the municipalities is not, and if 70% is not 70% of that figure is not 43 billion. Therefore, the bloating is of 43 billion, if I follow what I mean. So I would express it to say that, so where it says there, at an estimated amount of 43 billion, etc., that is where the bloating begins to take on your earlier point, given the fact that naturally municipalities across the country's budgets are higher than that. So it begins there, and then you add the points about the ghost workers additional to the issue. And so if the sentence says that the cost of government is, it's not the cost of government, it's the bloated component of the issue. Because if the police budget, let's assume it's 100 rands, and 81% of the police budget is cost of employees, so it's 81 rands. If I then make the point that in the 81 rands, or whatever, actually it's now 90 rands that they are spending, the 9 rands is the bloated bit.
And you still have a additional 7 rand for ghost employees.
Correct. So the point there says 34 billion rands is the point of bloating, which means I can work backwards from there and assume a different cost of employees. That's not what the cost of employees is. I think the 43 is the bloating. It's like my doctor says to me, Chief, you should be weighing X. You weigh Y. The bloating is the difference between the two.
And we don't include the heavy jacket that you...
Correct, yes. Yes.
So based on the deliberations at the moment, can we, I'm not really sure because the original question emanates from what Honorable Kaleka Masibuko said, to say that where did we drop the 34 billion? So can we transpose and take the 34 billion and replace the 43, which of course, if we take the 43 billion, it will be a misrepresentation of the real figures. That is why Honorable Maimane says there must be separation, there must be specificity in terms of the issues that are raised in here. So if you look at the correction, the adjustment that would have been made there, can we go with that adjustment to say that the 34 is placed there?
So read the entire sentence so that we can go from there.
All right. SALGA submitted that government should pay attention to key expenditure drivers with specific focus on spending efficiency, budget cuts, compliance and delivery impact on conditional grants. Furthermore, Salga made submission that budget cost on government an estimated. Okay, let me put a comma there after government. An estimated amount of 34 billion due to bloated staff. 5 to 25 billion due to ghost employees, combined factors on quality of services, fruitless and wasteful expenditure to the extent of 10.34 billion, and municipalities at the tune will replace that one at the tune of 7.31 billion. I'm not sure if it answers our.
To the extent of. Honorable Lekhanyan.
I think this is what now becomes a misrepresentation. Because once we reduce from a higher amount to a lower amount, there must be an explanation why there is a reduction. Yes, look, the point here is not to be. It's not. What do we call that? Spin doctoring. Yeah.
Yes.
The point is not to spin doctor. If there is an amount of 43 billion that is being spent collectively on all the aspects, that amount must be reported, but then it must be broken down to say, out of the 43 billion that is spent on employee costs, there is 34% that is spent on the cost that ordinarily would have been incurred, and there is a 9 billion that is spent on a bloated component of the staff, and there is 7 billion that is spent on ghost employees. And all in all, I mean, all of it combined, this is what it gives us. But if now there was 43 billion in the report, and after our discussion, the 43 billion disappears, it's 34 billion. How do we go out and explain it to, how did we reduce from 43 to 34? All the three components there have to be accounted, because we must know where are we in local government. We must know if there are bottomless pits, where the money is falling into, and how do we retrieve that money. But I mean, to spin doctor will become a problem.
Makakula, and then I recognize Honorable Kalega Mazibuko. I'll come to you. I just want to finish this point.
Honorable Kanyan, it's just that Mashile doesn't explain this thing. The 43 and the 34, it's a simple mistake. He wrote 43 instead of 34. So there is no issue there. The correct number is 34.
All right.
On the breaking down, as you are saying, unfortunately, we cannot break it down ourselves, because that's what we got from Salga. So it's a Salga figure. So we don't have to assume what they are saying. We are writing what they have said.
Okay. Honorable Kalega Mazibuko.
I'm covered on the 34 and the 43. And I know the people from that province, they got the numbers. The 34 becomes 43.
But I think for the integrity of the report,
Yes.
and the integrity of the work that we do, please just make sure that Salga sign off on the fact that it is 34. And we must just triple check that, because I wouldn't want to A, misrepresent them, and B, have Salga begin to challenge what is tabled in a report that they submitted.
So, Chairperson, get it from me. It's just that when Mashile was doing like the rechecking on the yellow thing, that's where the mistake. That's when he made the mistake.
If it's just a clerical error, it's fine.
Yes.
But let's just make sure that it is completely accurate as a belief.
Mashile must be vigilant, Chair.
Nori?
Say he must be vigilant.
Yes, that's the word. That's where the word vigilance comes in. You see,
Be a deadly mistake if we had gone with this.
10 billion rands is not a minor clerical error. That's what NYDA does. Anyways,
Otherwise, we'll issue an intelligence report.
yes, that's how people move organizations. Page 29 is where I'm at. Mashile, let's. If we agree on that view, you can remove the next paragraph because I think it's captured by the first.
By the way, Chair, the difference between 43 and 34 is 9 billion, not 10. So you also taking an extra billion there.
Yes. Ramulefe, there must always be an adjustment here or there. It's what's called rounding up. Yes. You know, ow. Come so you'll be calling it leakage. It's not. It's just rounding up here and there. Yay, Vikinyana. Let's keep going. We are now on page, Mashile, page 29, 27. There are new adjustments there. Can you highlight those? Please read that section.
On debt and debt service costs, SALGA submitted that the South African government has serious debt challenges. It unpacked the foregoing debt challenge by explaining to the committee that government's debt to GDP is at 77.4%, which translates to an amount of 6.6 trillion, municipal debt at 346 billion. It indicated the debt comprises of 346 billion for both creditors and 106 billion for debtors. It should be for debtors. Yeah, let's look in. We'll confirm. I think I'm with CISO in here. We can look into that. I think it was creditors and debtors. Yeah.
I happen to think the higher amount is to creditors, but just make sure you get the right sequences.
For debtors.
Because what Salga was saying in the meeting was that there are people who owe municipalities money and there are people whom the municipality owes money to.
Yes.
But let's make sure we get the figures for each one correct.
Yeah.
Okay, keep going.
Yeah. Household debt to income ratio is estimated at 65%, with some consumers are spending up to 75 to 80% of their income on debt repayment. Regarding economic growth, SALGA submitted that there is an urgent need for a government's integrated economic growth strategy addressing inefficiencies, spending on infrastructure, stringent debt and expenditure management. Yes, there we are for now.
Yeah, I think I'm happy with that myself. I don't know if there are any members who... Honorable Kalaga Mazibu.
Yes, as much as I'm happy with that, but there is an R who's not supposed to be there unless you add the word who. After the 65% comma, with some consumers spending up to 70 to 80%, or you must say with some consumers who are spending. There's some grammar thing there.
Mm-hmm.
Because there's a comma, so.
Who? That's fine.
Can we say who spend, or can we say who are spend? It's fine.
No, it's right like that.
Sorry.
Keep going. No, we've covered that.
On local government equitable share, SALGA submitted that.
No, Mashile. That is not that second paragraph is a different one
that's
to
fine.
that one.
That's fine. Okay. Keep going.
Keep going to the one below here.
Right.
What I want to get to.
Okay.
Mashile, please start at the top.
At the top
there, so we can
Just
read
here.
it as a paragraph.
On municipal debt relief. Should I read that one?
Yes.
All right. On municipal debt relief program, SALGA submitted that it acknowledges that the money owed by municipalities on the program has increased by 24.7 billion to 80 billion from March 2023 to February 2024. However, Conditions of the program have been reduced to focus on non-payment of current account of ESCOM. According to SALGA, National Treasury and ESCOM proposed a delivery agency agreement, DDA, to improve electricity service delivery and financial stability by addressing issues like non-payment of electricity bill and poor infrastructure. SALGA proposes that the DAA should follow the Municipal Systems Act 78 process to empower both municipalities and ESCOM with a holistic overview to current conditions within municipalities. The DDA conditions should be fair and beneficial for ESCOM and communities.
Is it DDA or DAA?
It's DAA.
Uqalile ngala meeting wakho.
DAA. Yeah. It's always good to have two-eyed people, like, instead of having one-eyed person in the whole community. Yes.
We can't discuss the historical legacy of the Northwest education system here. Let's keep going.
Okay, so we go into the next page. In conclusion, SALGA cautioned against
That is in concussions. Or Kevalaro.
in conclusion. I took it from Sfiso. In concussion, yeah. Yes. In conclusion. Oh, in conclusion, again.
The L must be.
Yeah. Okay, let me
Now
restart.
you are moving into Wesa words, in collusion.
Yes. Okay, yeah. Okay. Let's look into that. In conclusion. Right. In conclusion, SALGA cautioned against the overstating of the economic growth rates because structural reforms commitment often take time to implement. By the National Treasury, I'm not really sure, Sfiso, I just wanted to get clarity in here. Oh, yes.
You must put in that off.
Where's the off? SALGA cautioned against the overstating. Of the economic growth rates because structural reforms commitment often take time to implement. Okay, yeah. The reason I highlighted this in gray, I thought this should be removed, and then the sentence stops at implement. Right. Right. So the next sentence will start by SALGA also, and then we remove the gray one, the great one, if we agree on that. Sfiso, I will also invite you. So, yes.
So you also removing, so change.
I wouldn't remove just this bit here that speaks about considering National Treasury's downward projections. So what I would rather, Mashile,
Yes.
this paragraph needs a little bit of work. So in conclusion,
Yes.
SALGA cautioned against the overstating of the economic growth rates because of structural reforms commitment often take time to implement.
Yes.
And then you can leave that, you can skip that next line, put a parenthesis that says considering National Treasury's downward projection of South Africa's real economic growth, and close paragraph.
Okay.
Because that's just parenthesis. It's not part of the earlier sentence.
Yeah, considering what?
And then it says SALGA calls for the review of the macroeconomic strategy. That bit is fine.
National Treasuries.
No, Mashile, it's already there.
It's there. Yeah. Okay. 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 What do we do? Okay, then I remove this one. Right. In brackets, right? Yes.
You've got it, Mashile?
Yeah. Yeah.
What I will also say is, yeah, so that
This one. No, it cannot be. All right, all right. We'll come back to that. Salga? Do we start with the C? Okay. All right. Salga also calls for the review of macroeconomic strategy and that it should be inclusive and participative across all spheres of government, business and communities. Salga notes government's effort, support and logic to prioritize metros to be sustainable. However, there is unintended consequences to neglecting the secondary cities and rural municipalities, which can drive out investment and increase migration. Salga also expressed its okay.
Honorable Molefe.
It says Salga rejected the National Treasury's use of outdated data. I think the data that they used was 2011 data. But here, I don't know what we're trying to sanitize in, because we're saying not census 2022. It's correct, but you should say that they used 2011.
Correct.
Where is it?
As Honorable Kanyane has said, we don't put things that they've not said. We are just taking what they've said in the presentation. We don't add anything, otherwise.
From Salga's
Yes.
point of view.
We're just taking only what they said. What they've not said.
Not 2022.
Yes, that's what they say in the
No, they said 20. Yeah. Well, if
Was not used.
Yes.
No. 2022 was not used. They did not say what was used.
in their presentation.
Well,
Ma-
Chairperson, the challenge is that, Honorable, I can hear where you are coming from, but the challenge is that when you are writing from a presentation, they don't necessarily, they didn't even submit a document, but it's a presentation. So now from the slides, we're writing that. Probably they have said that when they were talking, but not on the slide itself,
on their
on
submissions.
their submissions.
Yeah, but then the outdated data that they used was 2011. You agree? Yeah, even if they didn't say it, that is what happened.
So let me do this. I'm going to suspend this point. The woman from the lady who made the submission, Yasalga, if we can just check, because this report has to stand for public scrutiny. And at lunchtime, I'm really comfortable. We can, Mashile, we can get somebody just to give her a call just to confirm what data was used for the purposes of this report. I think that's it. It's a year in specificity. I think the point is taken. I would rather have it from the horse's mouth than from any speculation. But let's keep going. We park this point. Mashila, please note that this point is parked and then it will be finalized right at the end. I'm just making a note here on the Salga point. We can keep going. You are now on page 28, Mashila.
I think Salga believes in order to address the inefficiencies, there should be intergovernmental collaborations, streamlining and enabling policies, impactful and differentiated support across all spheres of government, across all three spheres of government.
That's fine.
Yeah. Okay, we'll believe that. Right.
Page 28. Page 29. Page 30. Page 31. This is just Johannesburg. Page 32. Page 33. Page 34. Page 35. Page 36. Page 37. Page 38. Page 39. It's like mathematics. Page 40. Now, page 41. We start with findings and observations. Right. Let's go. Page 41. Can you go to the end of that page? Remember, starting there. Inputs from any member. Page 41. Page 42. Honorable Bateman, Honorable Wakely. Izona leswo.
Okay.
I didn't go very quick.
Thanks, Chair. Sorry, I've
Soon you're going to start
subconsciously
saying
been
things
listening
like
for.
you were on mute.
I've been subconsciously listening for the number 41, and when I heard 41, it was just the ears pricked up. We on to recommendations and observations.
Yes.
Okay. 10.1. I had a number of suggested changes for that, and some of these relate to wording and grammar, and some of them are relate more to substance. So, but they're all sort of mixed in. I'll read from the top. Well, first sentence of 10.1, fine. Second sentence, fine. Then the third sentence, the committee is of the view that government needs to widen. It says that it's revenue resource base. I just thought maybe just to clarify that just as being the tax base, if that's what is meant by that. Mm-hmm. In order to fund its spending pressures. The committee is of the view that rather than taxing the existing tax base more heavily. The government must consider investing more resources to curb tax evasion and non-payment of tax debts and explore other tax sources like online gambling and illicit financial flows. Mm-hmm. To this end, the committee supports the additional investments in Sars and the government spending reviews that will ultimately, rather than untimely, unlock additional resources. So it's not necessarily going to unlock revenue, because a spending review but it will unlock resources for government, as opposed to constant increases in the various tax regimes, potentially running the risk of adversely impacting the poor citizens. And then I'd add this, as well as reducing investment, economic growth, and job creation.
Mm-hmm.
That's 10.1.
The point you're trying to make is that, okay, that's fine. I will read it in toto in a moment. Yes, Honorable Bateman, let's just stick to this paragraph so that we finish it. Yes, okay. You were saying? Are you done?
I've done on 10.1, yes.
Okay, thank you. Honorable Molefe.
Chair, the issue here is that firstly, I think that we must, so there's no budget 2.0, we're talking about this budget, number one. Number two, that the fuel levy, which was used to replace VAT, is equally regressive. It is inflationary. It dampens consumption expenditure. It is anti-poor. It is anti-growth. And it is very similar to VAT, because VAT also ticks those boxes. So we don't really understand what the government was doing here by replacing, or the minister was doing by replacing VAT with a fuel levy, because they are equally dangerous, or they are equally regressive and counterproductive. But the minister shied away from taxing the rich. I know that there is an argument that the rich are already overtaxed, but we are of the view that the minister should not run away from taxing wealth that was accumulated over the years in South Africa at the expense of the labor of others. And so we think that more progressive tax instruments must be found that tax the wealthy more than they tax the poor. At the moment, the fuel levy taxes the poor more than it taxes the rich as a percentage of their income, if you think about it. So if we both have to pay 10 rand on a 1 liter of petrol as a fuel levy, 10 rand for me as a person who earns 100 rand is 10% of my income. But for a person who earns 1 million, it's minuscule. So it's regressive. It taxes the poor more. So I think that point should come out, that what the minister did by jumping to the fuel levy actually was not, it may even have been jumping from the frying pan into the fire. And that is our considered opinion.
Okay. Let me hear from other members, and we'll take the point. We are now discussing exclusively the point about the fuel levy and the amendments to 10.1. Honorable Mkhonto.
When discussing the pensions fund bill, it was explained as to COSATU as a stakeholder, what they presented to the committee. But surprisingly, with this bill, those who participated are mentioned, but it is not explained as to what did they say specifically about the fuel levy, because they did say something about the fuel levy. So I think it will be proper if it can be put in this report what those who participated, what did they say about the fuel levy? Thank you.
Mm-hmm. So there are 2 points that we are dealing with currently, honorable members. It speaks to the point made at 10.1 about the removal of VAT. What Honorable Molefe's argument is that that has been merely substituted by a more regressive tax in the fuel levy. What Honorable Mkhonto is saying is that actually there was a submission by other entities as it pertains narrowly to the question of the fuel levy, COSATU being one. So those are the 2 points on the table. I just note them, and then we'll work on a way forward in how do we address the 2 questions on the table. Honorable Wakelin or Bateman, I'm not sure which, and this is not to suggest any. Honorable Wakelin?
Chair, we are brothers in arms.
No, all I wanted to say is that I would never be one to suggest that white people look the same.
Hey, Batu. Anyway.
Point of order.
Chair, the last part of 10.1 refers to 2 matters which we actually would like to extrapolate on. The first one is a very simple one, where we look at the SARS. We said to this end, the committee supports the additional investment in SARS, and then that's where we stop. But I would like to include, and the commitment by the SARS Commissioner to raise the extra 20 billion in revenue required for the 2026 budget. Because
and that the SARS Commissioner must be held accountable to that.
Yes, if we can put it in there. And
so,
then,
Mashile, just wait, hold on. Honorable Wakelin, now,
Yeah.
because we are doing three things now,
Yeah, that's it. This is an easy one.
I'm starting to worry that it's a bit like the army. We can't ask us to do more than three. So let me hold off on the last point because I don't think there's contention on the issue. Let me move to the first two that were on the floor. Yeah, don't add another one onto the first two. On the first two, Honorable Molefe raises the point about the regressive nature of the fuel levy. This was equally so a submission by the PBO, if I'm not mistaken, in the point. Therefore, I think it would be amiss of us not to note that point. Whilst the removal of VAT as a regressive tax is noted, the fuel levy as a substitute is also burdensome on poor citizens. And it also has an economic multiplier in and of itself. I think the point must be made, and it must be supplemented in 10.1 by saying that obviously the committee notes with concern the introduction of the fuel levy. And of course, there are submissions by members of the public who made the same concerns. We are amiss of us not to represent their views. Honorable Bateman, Honorable Wakelin, let's have one meeting. So what were you? Yes, Honorable Bateman.
Thanks, Honourable Chair. I think, I'm just going to give my personal perspective on this one, right? Which is, you sometimes have to you sometimes have small losses in the face of big wins, and VAT is a big win. By comparison, to push up to have pushed back on the increase of a VAT rate of 2% is enormous. The fuel levy wouldn't actually be even in the news were it not for the fact that it had been frozen for 3 years, and between budgets 1, 2, and 3, there was an increase that was introduced, which was actually not a very big increase relative to the size of the fuel levy. It's only actually an inflation adjustment. So in real terms, there actually hasn't been an increase in the fuel levy. There's actually just been, it's just held parity with what it was before. But it's a lot of political capital has been made out of it, which is actually not justified. I think that's the big picture context. For 3 years, it was held constant, which was a way to try and undo some of the regressive effects of the tax, which was great. We weren't able to, or the government was not able to, deliver that benefit again this time round, in the context of very tricky circumstances of having to balance a budget without the 2% VAT increase. So I think I'm not trying to take anything away from the sort of underlying point, but I also don't think it must be made into a bigger point than what it is in the context.
Honorable Mwali.
Thank you so much, Chairperson. Maybe just to stress the gravity of the regressiveness of this option that was taken by the minister, moving from VAT to fuel levy. The State SA also emphasized the fact that more than 2/3 of the households in the lowest income quintile spend over 20% on their monthly income on public transport. So, Chair, this is hampering hard on the lowest income of this country. So really, this is very deep. And we will not then count as this committee as a win to say moving from VAT to fuel levy was a win. Because, and also supported by the sentiments shared by most of the public submissions that we got. They specifically mentioned that this is a regressive tax, and it would be bizarre to not see it on our report mentioned that it is regressive, because it is regressive. Thank you.
Honorable Molefe, and then Bateman and Honorable Siate, has your hand up? Or I don't want to. Yes?
Yeah, the other strange thing about this fuel levy issue is that I think it raises about, is it 4.1 billion that it will raise? Huh? 4 billion that it raised from the fuel levy. The budget is 2 trillion. How do you balance, or how do you add, or how do you plug a hole of by 4 billion rand in a 2 trillion budget by taking the 4 billion from the poor? So, I mean, the budget is so big that 4 billion really is minuscule, is nothing compared to the total budget. But then what doesn't make sense to us is why does the fuel levy become such a big thing that has to be done now? Take that money in a regressive tax from the poor, inflationary, counter anti-growth, and so on and so forth. Why do you have to resort to such a measure just for 4 billion out of 2 trillion? It really, Chair, I think maybe it is worth mentioning that it doesn't make sense.
Honourable Wakeland and Conto.
Thank you, Chair. I hear the sentiment, but I want to just speak to the facts. I'm just going to go look quickly. The fuel levy will actually just take out 3 billion out of the economy. And the fuel price is still 120 cheaper than last year, is what it was. The VAT would have taken out 16 billion out of the economy. And it's within that discussion that we need to try to find each other. These are the actual facts, because I'm concerned when we start because you're not comparing apples with apples, yeah? You're comparing apples with a pear. So let's just be clear on the matter. And I hear it is an emotional issue. But here's the reality. It is cheaper than it was last year. And on the point of Honourable Bateman, there was no adjustment done for the last 3 years on it. Thank you, Chair.
Honourable Conto.
Chair, I want to go back to what I presented.
Honourable Conto, can I ask you to use the microphone?
Okay. Can I go back to what I presented and Honourable Mwale was alluding to it? We can't change because we are seated here, now we understand each other, maybe, then we change what was presented by the public. It can't be. We must put what was presented by the public as is. We can't misrepresent the facts. As Mr. Makakula was saying, Salga said it like this, I can't change it. So even in this case, Chair, the public presented the fuel levy as a regressive tax. Let us put it like that. We can't change what they have said. And to further explain, Chair, there are people, when they want services from the Department of Home Affairs, the Department of Social Development, a clinic, chain stores, whatever, they have to travel. They can't walk. Maybe some of us, we are privileged that we are having these services at our doorstep, and we don't imagine how some people have to travel a few tens of kilometers for them to access basic government services. So it becomes a burden to them. We can't say the fuel tax is something small because we are comparing it to the VAT. No. How does it become a burden to a person who is staying at Mkanduli, to a person who is staying at Bedville, to a person who is staying at Tomo, to a person who is staying at Dludluma? That is what we must talk about, not compare it with VAT. Thank you.
Honourable Members, can I make a recommendation here? Firstly, I think it would be amiss of us as a committee to be silent on the fuel levy. Therefore, it must be stated that the committee notes the increase in the fuel levy. And correctly, I think the committee has the right to raise the concern about its impact on households. Because we are having two discussions. At a macroeconomic and fiscal level, others would argue that 4 billion in a 2.1 trillion rands budget is insignificant, and there's a macroeconomic argument that can be made for that. I am not persuaded by the argument that it's been left alone for the last 3 years, therefore it must. Because if you keep the same argument, you could say, well, VAT was left alone for the last 3 years, therefore it should. But what I am also wanting to say is that, of course, as a committee, we have heard submissions from the people of this country as it pertains to this issue of the fuel levy. But I don't think the point, and then what I would do, the other submissions that were made, because this matter has been sufficiently ventilated in court, I do think that it must be noted the fact that a review of the fuel price must not, now becomes even more urgent. Because you will recall there was extensive discussion about where it sits in its review. Because whilst Honourable Waitlin says it's been in, the current fuel price is a rand cheaper than what it was, the calculation and the formula thereof still means that government tax of the issue doesn't always sufficiently adjust for whether consumers receive relief when, for example, the fuel price goes down. And I can recall in the first engagements with Treasury, a discussion being raised about how this compares to neighboring countries, Botswana, etc. So I do think as a committee it's important to note the point, to note its impact on the poor, on the economy writ large, given the inflationary. But I do think the recommendation must be the review of the fuel price itself, because that is, as a point of consensus, something that even National Treasury have been calling for, and as something that we can endorse, because that will deal principally with the question that says, how do you ameliorate or deal with the burdensome nature of what this means prospectively? Because the points that have been made by members about its impact on transport costs, input costs, all of that are well made. I think for us, in terms of the Division of Revenue Bill and the increase in the levy, we must note it, and I would urge that the committee take a view that equally so encourages a review on the fuel price. There are preceding points, and the preceding points are other revenue-raising mechanisms must be sought. Because we can't sit here next year and be, if you like, creative people around which tax must be increased next. It's unsustainable. Next year we can't say, okay, this year we debated VAT and fuel. Next year we're going to go fuel, and maybe next year we'll try PIT, maybe medical aid tax cuts, maybe. No. Other additional revenue sources must be found. And I think that is be fair on our committee, notwithstanding the need for GDP growth, notwithstanding for all of those which are made in subsequent points. But I think in just dealing, because that's what the point prior is trying to allude to, additional revenue must be found. That's not the debate. Or at least if someone thinks that we shouldn't find any additional revenue, then I'm not sure. But I do think then that point, I think it's 10.1.1 comma, that of course there will be a negative impact on the fuel levy, and it would be amiss of us as a committee not to note that point. Honourable Mwali, then Honourable Mlefa.
Chairperson, one thing we should pick up from this discussion is that no one is disagreeing with the regressiveness of these two, which is VAT and fuel levy. We are now discussing the extent of the regressiveness when you are comparing these two. But the fact remains, this one that was suggested by the minister is a regressive tax. And it must be reflected on the report, because we are actually discussing and considering a report. It must be reflected there. And also, we cannot remove the fact that from the public, which was invited to comment on the report, they mentioned that it is a regressive tax, and we can't remove it.
No.
It must be reflected on the report that the public is took a position that this introduction of this fuel levy is a regressive tax.
I think the point is being included there. We can add word, but it's included. I don't think necessarily that it's not now not being included. Honourable Molefe.
Chair, to add injury to insult, it has been for a while now that we have observed the deteriorating geopolitical tensions in the Middle East, which indicate, if you are a prudent risk manager, indicate that there will be upward pressures on the fuel price, because the price of oil is likely to go up. And it looks like that risk is slowly materializing, because they say that Iran has closed a strait there, a passage for oil. But even before we knew, even before this happened, and we knew that there is tension there, and that tension is likely to put an upward pressure on the fuel price. So to increase the fuel levy in the face of a potential fuel price increases as a result of exogenous factors is imprudent.
I do think, honourable members, we could go around, because yes, I do take the point, and the matter, as I said to you, has been in multiple fora, notwithstanding our courts. I do think that the point that it is made, that it's a regressive impact, regressive tax, and that, honourable Molefe, the point that you bolster the point that I'm making, which is to say a review of the fuel pricing. Because here's the thing, it is important, not also in the light of the geopolitical tensions that are going to take place. So even prior to this issue, there was that. What I'm trying to not get us into a space of going is to say, we note the inputs of the public. We noted in the report that the fuel levy is regressive, and that an urgent call be made. What is within the locus control of Treasury? The locus of control of Treasury is to do the review of the fuel price and then make recommendations fitting post that review. Where we cannot be at now is at yea or nay, given the fact that the courts have ruled and this matter is here. So I am suggesting that we take the point that, not keeping in mind the regressive nature of the tax, that there must be an urgent review of the fuel price and that formula. Honourable Bateman.
Honourable Chair, yes, we would support that recommendation.
So if we can put it on there in that light, Mashile, can you read that sentence so that I know?
Yeah. The committee notes the negative impact of the fuel levy increase on the households that are already burdened by the high cost of living, and therefore calls for the review of the fuel price.
Put as noted by the public in submission.
At the end, right? As noted.
The South Africans have made their
Noted
submissions on this issue.
By the.
Are you making textual submissions or making an argument? Yes, Honourable.
By the.
Today's going to be long. Chair, the review of the modulation of the fuel price, because it's got to do with the model that they're using. It's not the fuel price itself. It's how do they modulate it? I just want us to get the right wording so that I look at the proper modeling of a fuel price that is sustainable.
Yeah, I think there is a way. I forgot where they put the fuel levy. The fuel price model. I'm not sure there's a. No. Okay. Right. It's a fuel price. Can you put? Have you put it there? The fuel price model.
Yes.
Okay. With that as a bullet point, then I think it covers the points. Can we agree to move ahead with that arrangement? As noted by the Siap Engos. Right. Mashile, you'll clean this up. Honorable members, it is now. I'm going to, at this point, we are stopping just before 10.2. Please make a note at that point. Lunch is served, resuming now at 1:15 o'clock. Can I ask that we have a half an hour lunch? I know honorable members here are hardworking citizens, but we did manage to get members here on a Monday with a threat of lunch. It would be unfair for us not for that threat to materialize. So can we take a break at 1:15? And if we can return at 1:45, that would be first price. Meeting will be adjourned at this point to resume. Give half time. No.